So here I am to share my story. It's kind of a personal story, and it might be a little bit on the raw side. And so that's okay. If you have questions along the way, and if I can see them, let me see. It says one comment. But if you have questions along the way, if I see them, I'll answer them. If not, I'll try and catch them later. And we'll see if we can answer them afterwards and give you everything that you need or answer any questions that you may have. You and I get to go on a journey now. Okay, we get to go back about almost 6 years to April 2012. This is back when I was entrenched in the thick of addiction. Okay, 18 years of addiction was where it was. It started when I was 14 years old, and that was back when the internet wasn't really around. And so it started with just, picture kind of pornography. And then it went to the internet pretty quickly, because that was around the time that it started up. And so from there, off and on for years, it became this place that I went to, and I felt so horrible about. I felt like this broken human being, like I'd never measure up. And so I tried my whole life to try and measure up as best I could. And so I was in and out of it for that 18-year period. So that means I went on a mission, and I was good and clean because there wasn't any pornography around. But we had other issues there on the mission. And I came back home after my mission was done, and I got married, and I went to the temple and I got married. And I had been dealing with pornography still. And I had these moments where I'd go see a bishop. I'd feel really good about myself. He would say, well, you're a good guy. We did whatever we needed to do. And so just don't go do it again. And for most of my life, I didn't realize that this was an addictive tendency. I just thought I was a broken person. Only in like 2009, did we realize that this was actually something that could be classified as an addiction. And I know there's people that argue that it's not an addiction. It's some kind of compulsive behavior that I couldn't stop, and that's enough for me. And so I was in this thing, and I didn't know a way out. And I didn't want to hurt my wife and my kids. I wasn't trying to do this. It was just this thing that just kept showing up, and I didn't know how to stop it. So April 2012 is the time when my wife and I are there, and she finally wants to know the whole spiel. That means I had got to spill onto her lap the depth to which I had gone in this direction. And that was the night that she told me, after hearing everything, that with our 3 kids, she wasn't sure if she wanted to stick around. Now, I don't know how many of you have faced this possibility inside of a relationship that was sealed and married for a time and all eternity. But this was a powerful, powerful punch in the face, so to speak, for me. It scared me so bad that I stopped looking at pornography from then on. Except for about 6 months later, I kind of started to go looking and then stopped myself because I didn't want to confront the possibility of her leaving. I'll tell you this much. In the middle of that night, she might have left, had not there been some kind of divine intervention. Her heart was breaking. She didn't know how to handle things. And in that moment, as she was praying, she got to glimpse or experience life in my skin for a brief moment. I don't know how that works, but she saw me in all of my suffering too. And that broke her heart in a different way. And maybe that's the reason that she decided to stick around and just see what would happen. So here's this beautiful, beautiful woman who has been through 10 years of marriage, holding the whole family together. And she's spoken about this on video. If any of you are ever interested in hearing her story, it's about 20 minutes long. We've got it up, and I can share the link with you. And she's spoken about her story. Here she is, and she decides to stick around. We have 6 kids now, so 3 more came. And just see. So here I am. I've stopped looking at pornography because I'm terrified of the possibility of being left all to myself, all alone, for the rest of my life, and still stuck with this addiction. But I go a year and a half, and I'm still terrified. I don't know how many of you know this or how many of you have dealt with this, but if you see somebody who's not looking at porn, that's not the end of it. So here I was, every time my wife would leave and I was in the home by myself. Oh my gosh, my heart, I would just be fighting with myself. And I wouldn't go look, but I would be fighting with myself. Every time there was an ad on the side of the screen, it was this massive struggle for me to deal with. Every time, like, I'd see a billboard or something would happen, or I'd have this weird dream or something would come up, and I would just be struggling with all these images that I'd crammed into my head for so many years. And this horrible feeling that there was no way I could get out. Now, I had gone everywhere. I had done the 12-step program, and I actually facilitated one for a couple of years after I was done with it. And there's some beautiful things about a 12-step program. You know, the place of honesty, that was great, but I was looking around and nobody was getting better. So I had kept searching, and I visited counselors, and I had done energy healing stuff, and I had certified and trained in healing methods, both energy-wise and non, and I had gone to martial arts training camps and go find yourself seminars, motivational stuff. I trained in coaching, functional psychology, you name it. Like, I went everywhere looking for an answer, because everywhere around me there were people saying, well, you're just going to be an addict for the rest of your life. And I'm so many days sober. And for me, that was the most abysmal thing I could possibly reinforce my life with. I thought, well, shoot, here I am, this guy that's been dealing with this, and everyone around me, faithful members of some church or just not, is telling me that I'm hosed, that every image I've ever seen is stuck there for good. I'm just stuck with it. It's telling me that, well, you can't really get past an addiction. All you can do is be in recovery forever. And I didn't believe that at all. That's not the God I believed in. I believed in the people who came to Jesus, and he's like, oh, 12-year issue of blood. Just touch my garment, we're good. 18-year issue of whatever the other thing is that's mentioned in Luke. Sure, yeah, we're good. 10 minutes or less. And I was like, why is it these people are done? Why can't I be done? And so as I was in this mode of desperation now, a year and a half into this, I was telling my wife, I can't handle this anymore. I don't want to live the rest of my life like not doing something. I want to live my life doing something powerful on this planet. I cannot stand the idea of spending my whole time in chains like this. Accountability software on the screen. Every time it goes off because of some weird inane thing, I feel like I'm a broken man, right? Accountability buddies that call me up and just check on me to make sure I'm not breaking things. And the internet filters, they're great. I love having internet filters to create a good environment. But at the time, they just reinforced this caged puppy thing. And I just felt so broken. So I told my wife, look, in a desperation, I was like, I got to do something. That day, I had been reading in the Doctrine and Covenants. So section 58 of the Doctrine and Covenants, verse 42, I believe it is, where he says that anybody who has repented of their sins, he says, I, the Lord, remember them no more. And that phrase slapped me across the face like no other phrase of scripture ever has in my entire life. Remember them no more. Here I am riddled with images, and God has the ability not to remember things. And I thought, if that's a divine quality, please sign me up. Like, if that's a spiritual gift to not remember things, please sign me up. So there I am. I'm sitting there. And I get an idea come to me that, like, well, if you want it to not remember it, then you just got to get it out of you. So I go through, I tell my wife what I'm doing. She's not too happy about it, but I was desperate. So we set up this situation where I could go and do this work. It was deeply, deeply emotional work. And I just followed every idea that came. It was just one idea after another. And after 20 hours of like tears and boogers and all kinds of stuff spread over about 4 days, I came out the other side exhausted. And when I woke up the next day, all the fear had left me, and none of the images had returned. And since that day till now, nothing. I can sit in a room with a computer without an internet filter, and I'm okay. I'd prefer a filter if I can have one, but I can sit and run without, and it doesn't bother me. People can now show me porn if they're that type of person, and it still doesn't control me at all, because I figured out how to delete the images from my mind. Meaning, not whether or not they actually get deleted, I don't know. Psychologists can argue. I'm not a neurologist. I don't know what that goes. But in actual experience, they're gone. Meaning that I've somehow reclaimed control over what my mind recalls and brings up at random. So now I'm in control instead of my mind just being in control. I learned how to control my emotional state so that when I was depressed or sad, I could just shift it. I learned how to get inside my own thought patterns and understand not only what I was thinking, but how to turn that to something that could enable personal revelation and guidance for my life instead of just being something negative. And that was it. Like, it was just this beautiful, powerful experience. And on the other side of it, I was done. But then all of a sudden, I meet some mom who is struggling. You know, her son had just seen some porn on her ex-husband's computer, and he was terrified of it, and didn't know, he couldn't function around computers anymore. It had just rattled him. And she had come from a counseling background, psychology, and she was worried that her son was going to be like just scarred for life. And I told her the same scripture from the Doctrine and Covenants, that God has this ability to not remember things, and in my experience, it's a possibility. And she says, okay. So we meet up with her son in a park in the middle of Orem, Utah, because I was in town. She was on one side. I had to get a little creative with the process because we were in the middle of a public park. But we sat down. He goes through this process, and 45 minutes later, he comes out wiping tears from his face and whatnot. And I'm just thinking, well, I hope that worked. And then like 3 months later, I contact her, and I'm just like, hey, how's he doing, by the way? And she's like, he's been fine since that day. He's been absolutely amazing. And that was the first time I realized that this process could be something that was more than just for me, that like this is a process that could actually work for more people. And then last year I had a coach kind of kick me in the face and tell me, look, if you know how to do this, you should actually help people with it. And so that's when we started coaching people. And since then we worked with teenagers, people who've been dealing with this since they were teenagers, and now they're in their 60s and 70s. People who are in positions of really high authority, like CEOs and whatnot, people who are just like your every average kind of day laborers and whatnot. And it's just been powerful to see these transformational experiences along the way. And I developed what I call the freedom formula, which after we tested all the things that I'd done, we boiled it down to this just simple little set of exercises that takes about 40 days for a guy to start and go through and end on the other side, having tasted real freedom and knowing that he has all the tools that he needs to make that something permanent in his life for good. A while ago, I was working with a guy who he had been molested for 5 straight years as a kid by his babysitter. And he had forgotten all of it. And then years later, those memories had started to come back and just rattled him. So he's trying to function in the world. His mom turned out to be lesbian, and she divorced his dad, and so he hated women. And there was all these issues with his life, and he'd spent well over $100,000 going to residential rehabs and trying energy healing and counseling and everything that he could find. And as kind of a last-ditch effort, he came to me. And so we started working. And at the beginning of it, he was going every day to this just to clear his mind and to get him off of what was happening. And at the end, he said, he looked me in the eye and he said, Bob, I just went 5 days without even thinking about porn. And I wasn't even trying. And I just know that it'll be gone for good when the time is right. Now, he had a lot to go through. Some people, it happens almost immediately. But the power of seeing the transformation in this guy who is now in a deep, committed relationship with another lady and has just transformed so many things about who he is and how he engages life is such a testament to me of the ability that all of us have to not be stuck in what's happened to us. That we don't have to remember it, meaning it's not a member of our life. It's no longer a part of our identity. In the process, what I learned was something simple. Porn isn't the problem. Porn is the solution that I went to, that other people went to, because we couldn't cope with this messed up idea we had in our head about who we are and what we deserve in life. And as soon as you figure that out and just deal with that issue, which is controlling more behaviors than just pornography, all kinds of other things open up. And this beautiful process starts to emerge where a person now is open to some real transformation and change in just a really short amount of time. So, you know, I have this cup here. It's like the splash pads in Arizona. We have a bunch of splash pad parks, and they have those water features with the big pole and the buckets all around, you know, and the bucket gets filled with water. And when it gets super full, it tips. Well, a lot of the programs I had gone to were teaching me how to hold the bucket steady so that it didn't tip. Some of them gave me tools to scoop the water out of the bucket. And if I could bail fast enough, I'd be okay. But the process that I discovered that just sort of happened to me because I was desperate and I tried everything I knew was one that taught me how to find and turn off the faucet. And then there might be a little bit of residual water in the bucket that needs to be bailed. But beyond that, it doesn't fill up again. And the freedom that I felt after that first bit just continues to keep growing. So I guess today the message for all of you that I want to convey is that there's hope, that if you're listening to somebody telling you that you're going to be an addict to anything for the rest of your life, and I mean anything. We work with people with food addiction. We started working with somebody with smoking, and some lady who had just a nervous tic, one lady who was dealing with a weight issue. Like if they tell you that it's something, an addiction is something you're going to be dealing with for the rest of your life, it's just because they haven't experienced anything different. That the people around them, that's all they know. And they haven't tasted the power that comes from this kind of process and the freedom that it can generate. So they're not bad people, they're not dumb people, they just haven't experienced what's on the other side. And it's so powerful and leads to such a fulfilling life that I hope you guys can even consider that as a possibility. Now, for you guys today, if you know of somebody who's struggling with this, and this type of thing that I'm talking about sounds like it would be up their alley, then you can go to liberateaman.com. You can sign up for a call. I get on the call, I talk to everybody, and we see if they're not in a place where I can help them, at least I can point them in a good direction or answer their questions for just 15 minutes and maybe give them some hope back in their life. So liberateaman.com, you can go there and check it out. I have a Facebook page, Liberate a Man, and you can send me messages or anything like that. My goal, my wife's goal, is to really give people back their agency, give people back their ability to make a conscious choice about what they want to include in their life, so that instead of their body choosing for them, they're the ones in control and their spirit gets to decide where they go. So I hope you all have a wonderful night, and a huge shout out to High Five Live and the people that invited me on. And please, I'll check the comments. I didn't get to see them along the way, so if you had questions, I'll answer those, and reach out. And I hope to see some of you or talk to some of you soon. And if you know of anybody who needs help, send them along, because there's hope.